folks. So today I am talking to my good friend Malaika Damon. Welcome, Malaika.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for having me.
So let me tell y'all a bit about Miss Malaika. She is such a resourceful woman, and that kind of goes hand in hand with her also being an amazing event planner because you have your own events, which I've attended, and they've always been so well done. And you shared with me that you have been an event planner in the past. And you are a great friend. She's such a great friend and a great mother. And so the mother part is kind of what I wanted to talk to her about today. So welcome, Malika.
Thank you, thank you.
So what I did want to discuss was like we were having a conversation one day about parenting and parenting styles. And everyone was speaking about I guess how they believe they were a parent. And you used a word called an unparent. You said you were an unparent.
Yes.
And I was like, what does she mean by that? And so then we went into a whole conversation about what it meant to be an unparent. So before we get to that though, I want to talk a bit about your background and you growing up. Tell us where you are from and what it was like growing up.
Okay, so I was born in Washington, D.C. My mom went to Howard University. She's originally from Baltimore. She met my dad in DC. They had me. Things did not work out, so she moved back to Baltimore maybe when I was a week old. So I've spent the majority of my life growing up in Baltimore City. I went to Baltimore City Public Schools. And so this is the city that I've grown to love. And when I turned 17, I got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
um, Growing up, you grow up fast in the city, faster than most children would. There was some oversight, but not a lot of oversight. And I was doing things as a teenager that I shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah.
um, and so at 17, I got pregnant with my first child. I had him 2 days before I turned 18. I had
Okay.
already graduated high school, um, and I actually was accepted to UMBC. So I had him in October of 1998. I deferred my um, enrollment at UMBC a semester and decided to go into the spring. So I
Mm-hmm.
did, I did go to UMBC for a few years. 6 months after I had my first child, I got pregnant with my second child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was 19 with two babies who were 14 months apart. And life was stressful. I didn't know what I was doing. I tried to read all the books. I tried to, get advice from family. Um, and 3 years later, I had my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, I am 22 with three children. And the approach that I took with my children really came out of, I don't know if spite is the word, but when I kept getting pregnant, there were members in my family, and I believe it was both sides of the family, who basically said I ruined my life.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Teenage pregnancy is always looked at as a statistic. Your kids will not amount to be anything. They'll be, drug addicts or, involved with law enforcement, things like that. So my goal in life was to prove everyone wrong.
So I know that you talked about so you have three children and they're
three,
all
three adults. Shout out to Harry. Three adults.
she has three adults. She doesn't have children anymore. She has three adults now, and you proved everyone wrong. But I did want to talk a bit about you touched on being a statistic and people thinking that your kids would not make it. And I know one part of that we talked about before was while you were pregnant and some challenges that you faced with one of your pregnancies.
Yes. So for my oldest son, uh, he was a week late. So I delivered him at 41 weeks. But the week before I had him, I had a sonogram because it was my due date. no movement was, happening. So they decided to give me a sonogram. And I remember laying on the bed, and he pulled the image up and he said, "Oh, it's a lot of cord." And I said, "Is that going to be an issue?" Because and you could see it in the sonogram, it was like poured all over in front of the baby. And he said, "No, it shouldn't be." So, I'm 17. Once again, I'm a black girl from Baltimore City. And so I'm thinking they know more than I know, but I felt like something was wrong. A week
Mm-hmm.
later, I went into labor. I was in labor for maybe 13 hours. Um, And when I finally delivered my oldest son, he was not breathing. The cord was wrapped around his neck 2 times. His APGAR scores go from 1 to 10. 1 is basically the baby is almost dead, and 10 is perfectly healthy baby, and his was a 2.
Oh, wow.
Um, so he had some complications. They rushed him out. They got him back. But I did not see my son until the next day.
Oh, wow. And this was your first
My first
pregnancy?
pregnancy, never been pregnant before, my first delivery. And I look back on that situation thinking I really should have done something. I should have spoken up, or even after the fact, I really should have said something to bring awareness of this issue. But once again, I'm 17. Everyone's telling me I don't know what I'm talking about
Right,
because I'm
right.
17. And so, we just let it go. But yeah, I was convinced something was wrong was going to happen, but nobody really listened to me.
Well, the thing about that is that, there are a lot of studies and research that show the disparities in healthcare among Black women and specifically in childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but, that's something that even the most educated Black women experience, not being
Yeah.
listened to, not being taken serious, kind of dismissed, and
Mm-hmm.
just a prescription written, here you
Yep.
go. But I'm about to listen. I'm about to get on my pedestal here
Right.
because it just feels like a lot of times in healthcare, it's about just curing the symptoms, make the symptoms go away. And no
Right.
one is really looking for the root
The
of the
root
problem.
cause. No, they're not. They're just trying to medicate you, shut you up, get rid of your symptoms, and say, "Oh, it's nothing wrong with you," or it's
Mm-hmm.
in your, or they'll pull this. It's in your mind. They'll
Right.
refer you to mental health services when you know something is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a traumatic experience. Um, he was a big baby, 8 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
10 ounces.
Oh, wow. Huge.
Yeah. um, and so after the first week, he had some complications, but after the first week, he was fine.
Mhm.
Um, and so I never pressed the issue after that.
So, how was it then navigating with 3 children at 22? You're getting a lot of negative energy sent your way. How did you navigate all of that?
I, I tried ignoring it, and I'm not going to lie, it did get to me in the beginning. Um, I tried to be the quote unquote perfect parent. Um, Everything had to be, let's do a routine. Everyone had a bedtime. Um, they had to be polished head to toe. It was like putting on a face so no
Mhm.
one would judge me, because parenting is one of the most judged quote unquote occupations that you can have.
Yes.
Um, no one's going to agree on how to parent uniformly. And that's okay, because all children are different.
Hmm.
So, I tried to do it by the book, and we were all stressed out. We were all crying. you know, we're crying, I'm crying, and I got to a point where I said, this cannot be my life for the next 17 more years. Like, we cannot keep being this stressed out because no one's having a good time in life.
Hmm.
And so I said, I wonder what would happen if we just got rid of the rules. We have rules for safety, but why do we have to have an 8 p.m. bedtime?
Yep.
If they're sleepy, it's going to go to sleep. But why do I have to fight with you for an hour before you go to sleep? I'm just going to let you stay up until 9 o'clock. I'm not going to let you stay up all night, but I'm not going to fight with you either. And so I think something clicked in me. And when I started experimenting of things, to take away, where if you want to wear a sweatshirt in the summertime to the grocery store, I'm going to let you. If you want to wear a Spider-Man costume to go eat in a restaurant, I'm going to let you. I started to pick my battles, and those, I don't want to say antiquated because people still use them, but those rules didn't work for us.
Yeah.
So I decided to figure out what worked for us. And what worked for us was focusing on education. That was the priority, and enjoying life.
What I think is so great, that you were young and you yourself trying to figure out who you are and what rules you should adopt and should let go and that type of thing for your own life. Like your 20s is the main time to figure that out. Mm-hmm. But now here you have these 3 kids that you have to figure it out for all of y'all. And I love that you came to that conclusion so young, because it takes people years to get their groove and to understand that the tried and true methods do not apply to all, and you can be different, and it's not wrong. It's what works for us. So I love that you figured that out in your 20s and you were able to then be a more successful parent. So what did you see differently? Like, I'm sure it wasn't just, okay, now we're going to do something different, and it was smooth sailing from then. How did that go when you started to implement that mindset?
Of course, you have your ups and downs. Sometimes it's worked and sometimes it didn't. But I feel like I grew with my children. We all grew up together. Although, I was doing things that 20-year-olds probably were doing when I was 15, I was still a teenager. I was still young. I was still inexperienced. And I remember growing up, and my mom did not communicate well all of the time. And I was inquisitive, and I wanted to know why I couldn't do certain things. Why do we have these rules? And the answer I always got was, because I said so. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't answer my question. Like, I really wanted to know. And I felt like if someone would have just explained it to me, as I got older, my mom talked to me and she explains why she did some of the things she did. And I felt like if she did that when I was younger, I probably would have understood it better. But we, as a culture, don't feel that children deserve respect and communication, because we're the authority figure, we're the parent, what we say goes. And that is true in some cases. But I felt like I wanted my children to know I respected them. I demand respect. I'm going to respect you in turn. And we're going to communicate openly. We're going to make choices together. I'm going to explain to you if I say no. I'm going to explain to you why. And that's kind of how, I decided to go about it, because I didn't want them to feel like I felt.
Yeah.
We always say, we talk about our trauma in childhood and then say, well, I'm fine. I grew up fine. And I want my children to be great people because of my parenting, not in spite of my parenting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that. So you talk about trauma, and I know a lot of us can look back on our childhood, and especially if we have parents of a certain age, because they grew up in a time where they also did not have the space to be able to be who they were freely. And so it's like, I kind of understand some of the strictness and some of the, listen, I can't explain this to you. You just got to listen right now, right here kind of thing. But I'm really loving that our generation is trying to be different, because we now have the space to be different and to teach instead of just authority and, this is for your safety kind of thing. Um, I see a lot of times when people talk about things like this, they refer to that hierarchy of needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like some of our lower level needs are now met for some of us, of course, not for everybody, but you can be different now. You can approach things in a different manner. I was telling you, I just love that you got there so early,
And
so
I think
early.
one of the things also was everyone doesn't learn the same.
Yeah.
And you can't parent every child the same. They are individuals. Children are individual people who you guide through their life, but you cannot make them be a different person than they are.
Yeah.
Outside of safety and violence, we didn't have many rules in my house. Get good grades, because I knew that I could not pay for 3 college tuitions. I knew I probably would not be in that position, but get good grades, and be a child, no violence, don't get in trouble in school, don't get in trouble with the law, no drugs. That was basically it. My mom used to say all the time that, oh my gosh, they're going to grow up and not going to be worth anything because you don't make them do anything. And it's like, no, I don't make them do anything, but they do stuff, but I didn't have my children to be my maids or, my chefs or anything like that. They didn't ask to be here. So my only job is to nurture them into the people that they're going to become. So school was their job, they had chores, of course, keep your room clean, but it wasn't any every Saturday at 8 a.m. I want you to mop all the floors in my house. No.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that you said school was very important. That was their job. And all 3 of them have done well in school. The baby is in college.
The baby is in college. The baby goes back on the 28th. She has been home for winter break, but yeah, she's at Towson. This will be her 2nd semester. And, because I stress open communication as they were growing up, they tell me everything. Sometimes they tell me too much, and I tell them, listen, we don't have to talk about that.
Boundaries.
But I also let them know that it's okay to mess up.
Yeah.
I don't ever want them to be afraid to come to me. So she finished her 1st semester. She passed most of her classes. She has 1 class that she has to retake, and that's okay. I don't feel like anyone goes into freshman year. Okay, I shouldn't say that. Yeah, some people do pass all their classes freshman year. I didn't pass all my classes freshman year.
I was barely making it, girl.
So, we talked about it. She has a plan, and she's going back more confident than she was last semester, which is great. So I am fully confident that she'll be fine. But also, I stress education, but Mariah is more of an artist.
Yeah.
She's more into art and creating, singing, drawing, and things like that. So math and science aren't really her motivation, but she loves forensics. So that's why her major is forensic chemistry. But she's doing good. She passed her science classes. She passed her math class. That's, so those are good ones.
I think that's so awesome. All of your kids are in like science type.
Yeah, the oldest is at University of Baltimore for psychology, and he should be graduating in 23. He's already talking to his professors about the PhD program at UB, so he'll probably be going into that. The middle is about to graduate UMBC in May from a degree with a biochemistry degree. And then he has applied to 12 schools for his PhD program. So we will find out, I think, in March where he's going. And he is going to be studying biochemical engineering.
And then you yourself, you're in school as well, right?
I am in school. I tried to go back multiple times with them growing up, and it just was never the right time. never the right time, or I took too many classes. I was trying to go full time. I was working full time. I was working 2 and 3 jobs. So um, once they no longer needed me as a parent, I decided to re-enroll in school. So I start Monday. I am a senior. I have, how many credits do I need to leave? 30 maybe?
30 more to leave?
30 more.
Okay.
So I'm looking probably December next 23. But I'm not rushing it. It'll happen when it happens. I had to come to terms with that, you know. But my goal is for all of us to be degreed by 2025.
Yeah, and listen, I think it would be great if you and Mariah could cross the stage at the same time. Oh my gosh, how awesome would that be, right? Well, I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about your parenting style. And again, this was just your experience. It's not a guide,
no, and I am not an advocate for teenage pregnancy. I would like to say that. I don't think anyone should be having a baby when they're a teenager, but I'm an advocate for teenage mothers because you can do it. Your life is not over. You know, find a support system, find out what works for you. Don't listen to these people telling you what you have to do. You don't have to. Find out what works for your family and do it like that.
Yeah, I thank you so much. This was so good. I felt like I was gonna start tearing up, especially when you talked about how you were getting all that negative energy your way. And I'm like, that's, I mean, I get.
I was like, y'all counting me out already.
Right. I get people are disappointed and that kind of thing, but I mean, this is the time when our girls need help.
Should come together. Yeah. You know, my mom, you know, as many issues as sometimes I have my mom, she really stepped up. And I couldn't do a lot of it without her. So, you know, but you got to sacrifice, you know, you got to put those kids first. You got to communicate with them. You have to respect your children. You know, of course we all mess up. We have bad days, but my default wasn't annoyance. What do you want? My default wasn't aggressiveness. My default wasn't shut up, you too noisy. Like my default was trying to understand and communicate with them.
Yeah, because that's definitely how I was raised. But you know, your parents, they go out to work and they come home and they tired. And like it's like I get it, but at the same time, it's like, listen, I asked you to bring me here.
Exactly. They didn't ask to be here. And I actually had a job where, and I love the people at this job so much, but I got a new position and it was so stressful. I was working long hours, the kids were being neglected, and I left. I got another job. I probably could have stayed and climbed the ladder faster, you know, but I decided to put them first. And the life is stressful enough. You have all this stress outside the home. I don't think you should have to come home and then be stressed out because of your children.
Yes. I love it. I love that. Love up on them babies. They need it.
Right. Love it. They need it.
Yeah.
They need it. Yeah, all of them. And they spoiled, but they're not brats. You know?
Right.
They have to give them a reason to say no to them.
And I think that's a huge difference in how you communicate as well, because people tend to be brats when there are no consequences for their behavior, there are no boundaries, you know. That's when you see the brat come out, when they just can run all over you. And you definitely were not like I know you wasn't like that. So.
Of course, they respected me enough that they knew that I was in charge, that don't let me find out that you did something you weren't supposed to do. And when you did do that thing, we're going to sit down, we're going to figure out why you did it and the consequences that's going to, you know, be attached to that. Because I tell them, everyone has choices in life, but there's consequences to every choice you make. And so you need to sit down and decide, what consequences are you willing to live with after you make this choice?
You know, I remember there was a woman on Oprah. She was an Indian lady. I can't remember her name, or even if she was like a doctor or something like that. But she talked a lot about the same type of thing, that she didn't have to get physical with her children or anything like that. And then after a certain point, it just got to where she would kind of give a look and be like, I know you know better. And already, I mean, she knows what works for her kids. So which one she could use that on and that type of thing.
In the beginning, I was doing spankings, but I remember I sat down one time and I'm like, why am I tired, hurting myself, stressing myself out over something you did?
Yeah.
Why? Like something in this picture is not right. And my brain was like, why are we doing this? Why do we do this? Because you hurting, I'm pissed off, I'm sweating. Like, this doesn't make sense.
You feel bad and I feel bad. Why
Right.
are we doing this?
Right.
Oh, love it, love it, love it.
And parenting is forever changing. Like, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to do things that you think are right, because I'm convinced that most parents do everything they do out of love.
Yes.
Love and protection. But some things, if it's not working, just try to change it up. See what works for you.
Yeah.
Stop listening to all these people on Facebook. Stop.
All the experts, girl.
Yes. No,
everybody's an expert,
if that doesn't work for your house, don't do it.
Like, I'm an expert too. I ain't got no children, but I'm an expert.
I'm telling you.
Again, thank you so much, Malaika. This was such a great discussion.
Glad you invited me.